We want to talk now about the Jayland Walker case and get some perspective on the grand jury process, which again began today. We bring in our contributor, Mark Naymik, managing editor of Signal Cleveland's newsroom. Of course, Mark covered the Walker shooting and demonstrations for us last year. And he's followed police shootings and reactions for years here in Cleveland. Mark, as always, it is great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me on.
This took 8 months to get to a grand jury. Is that unusual?
No, let's look at this case in particular. You now have most cities turning to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation to come in as an impartial set of eyes to look at these. This case in particular involving 8 officers on scene that fired their service weapons, 40 officers in total, about 12 hours of video from all of those body cams that have to be looked at. The Bureau was literally trying to stitch together a play-by-play of what happened that night. That's in addition to doing, interviews with the police officers who we've not heard from yet. That'll eventually come out. That takes, typical case 400 to 500 hours, according to Attorney General, which oversees this. That's Dave Yost. And in this case, he's already said it's more than 1,000 hours in.
Let's talk about some comparisons some people are making to this and the Tamir Rice case back in 2014. Obviously, some differences there, but do you see any similarities?
Well, let's first look at that time frame. It took, a lot of people forget, 13 months to get that case before the grand jury, and that only involved 2 officers, 12-year-old boy playing with a gun that was a replica but looked like a real gun. You had a young officer. There was a lot of things to unravel there, from how poorly the communication was between dispatch that day and the officers, and if information had been relayed that perhaps this was just a boy that they thought initially playing with a gun, things could have been different. But that took 13 months nonetheless, and that was done by the prosecutor's office.
And the grand jury failed to indict in that case, of course. There were protests. It happened in December, so not a lot of protests.
Right.
But we see in Akron today that folks are getting prepared for what they feel could be protests there. Also hearing from the Walker family today, hey, slow down. Have faith in residents. What should we be seeing? What can we expect to see in Akron over the next few weeks?
Well, I think right now there's stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. For example, or they've talked about it a bit, but the city is reaching out to community leaders. They're trying to get people informed. You've been seeing Akron learning from past mistakes by other cities, talking to the community about how the process works. That's something that really didn't happen that clearly in the Tamir Rice case. People were surprised at how that went down. There was no actual vote. The prosecutor went in and made a decision to say, hey, we don't have enough evidence. Attorneys for the Rice family thought that was sort of coloring. In Akron, they're talking to community leaders, church people, and others saying, let's let this process, we're going to put all this out, and then we're going to, within 24 hours, give you all of the evidence that we looked at once the jury takes a vote in this case.
And again, a good chance to remind people the grand jury works in secret. We're not going to get any tea leaves at all until a decision is made.
No, and that would only harm, I think, the Walker family and the community if that got leaked out, because then once again it could be used against whether it's a no bill or a for bill, and that's just a term they use that means to indict or not indict. And then there's the big step of taking it to court. And whether or not, prosecutors can make a case if that's what the grand jury decides should be done.
Okay, Mark Naymik, again, good to see you.
Always good to be here.
We will see you next time
and
talk more about this.